A little bit about myself. I am also somebody with a background in the energy, oil and gas. But this ended for me in 2015. So for many years, I was employed in various roles in the energy company, OMV, probably you know it. Mm-hmm. And then I have, from OMV, I have jumped to different roles because of the current crisis in 2015. And then now it seems that it was a very good idea from my side and a very good chance, because I see that the energy industry today has a bit of decline, especially coming from fossil fuels. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So besides that, I have lived in Vienna for already, I guess, 8 years now, since 2012. Now I'm in Romania, and I'm presenting you this webinar from Romania, from Ploiești, which is my hometown. Mm-hmm. But once the situation changes a little bit, I'll be back to Vienna, and from there I will try to continue my work about the SDGs. I'm now working as a consultant, and I'm trying to help companies, smaller ones, bigger ones, even startups, to look at SDGs from maybe an easier, simpler perspective, and to help them take what's needed to take out of there for the future strategy for sustainable development. Well, and
SMEs just need to learn strategy first.
I guess, yeah, we all need to learn strategy in a way that it comes a little bit far away from the original business model, you know?
Agreed, yes.
And so this might be a good opportunity for even for us as individuals to realize what can we do to help advancing some of the sustainable development goals, which are also regarding us individually. So let's see. Yeah, I'm hoping that you will like the presentation, and then I'm looking for your questions and for your feedback. If you want to give it, I will be very happy to have it.
And also, I don't speak Romanian very well, but I understand it decently. So if you guys want to run the presentation in Romanian, I'm totally okay with that.
We have everything in English.
Okay, perfect.
Because we wanted to address, or I wanted to address, I'm always addressing to an international audience. Mm-hmm. And English is the best way to do it.
The language of business.
Yes, besides French.
Only in North Africa.
Yes, you're right. Yes, yes, it's true. And some other parts, maybe. Canada, maybe.
I'm very sorry, my dogs are barking. I have 2 little dogs. So thank you, Patrick. I would like also to give the word to Corina Mihul to present yourself, and I also see that Alina and Teodora joined. So just a quick introduction about yourself, ladies. Who wants to start? Corina, unmute yourself.
Scuze. Bună tuturor! Este ok dacă vorbesc în limba română? E mai ușor pentru mine. Eu am 2 business-uri. Unul este o tipografie și o agenție de producție publicitară și în ultima vreme ne-am îndreptat către partea de design și tehnoredactare, pentru că partea de print s-a oprit. Deci, în ultima vreme am lucrat foarte multe machete pentru online și pentru print, pentru perioada când s-a dat drumul la evenimente și la întâlniri. Iar al doilea business la care lucrez este un magazin online cu bijuterii și obiecte din sticlă de Murano, de unde puteți să luați cadouri atât pentru voi înșivă cât și pentru persoanele dragi. Bijuterii din sticlă de Murano, vaze, boluri, toate semnate de maestri sticlari din Murano. Ceea ce vedeți la gâtul meu aici este unul dintre modelele care este pe site.
Foarte frumos! Mulțumesc mult, Corina!
Și eu vă mulțumesc!
Dacă restul nu vor să zică câteva cuvinte, putem face la final și să-i dăm cuvântul Corinei.
Sau poate tu, Crina, ai vrea să spui 2 cuvinte despre tine? M-aș bucura să...
Da, eu sunt Crina Diculescu, am înființat Dynamic Business Connection în urmă cu un an. Am colaborat până în prezent cu Camera de Comerț Britanică Română, pentru care am organizat evenimente. Am colaborat de asemenea și cu o companie din UK, Back to Business, cu care am organizat evenimente atât în România cât și internațional. Îmi place foarte mult să conectez oamenii și business-urile și să-i ajut să se dezvolte și să găsească întotdeauna oportunități. Și vreau să-ți mulțumesc, Corina, pentru că, uite, făcând aceste lucruri, am reușit să intrăm în contact și să facem împreună acest eveniment. Și sunt tare fericită și abia aștept să aflu mai multe direct de la tine.
Da, așa e. Deci și eu îți mulțumesc pentru deschidere. Poate că la momentul respectiv te-ai gândit ce poate fi subiectul, despre ce noutate poate aduce și mă bucur că ai avut încredere să organizăm acest webinar.
A fost o încredere reciprocă, așa că...
Okay. Super!
Super!
Atunci să-i dăm drumul, nu?
Da, cum să nu?
Hai să-i dăm drumul. Ok, so English sau română? English, okay?
English.
Let's get the English. So, this webinar, this presentation from my side was aiming to produce an easy look over the Sustainable Development Goals, which are known as the SDGs, because I feel that these are an important roadmap for growing a sustainable business. So I know that these are being produced by the United Nations organization. They might be a little bit cumbersome, they might be a little bit confusing, they are written in a certain language. So my point today is to help anyone who has a small business or a bigger business, or anyone who individually is interested, how we can contribute to the advancement of, let's say, sustainable development in general, because we are all interested in a better future, in a better world, and something that runs with, let's say, with a sustainable approach. Okay, so let's think a little bit as a background. What does it mean when we think about a positive lasting impact from our side, or maybe from our company side? This has always to do with having great products and services, having a sustainable business that can be run by itself with a little bit less intervention from outside, to have new market opportunities, to have maybe competitive advantage, to be a little bit different from our competitors on the market, to use resources in a smart way, to have an integrated business that makes us less dependent on outside help, on our suppliers, maybe on our distributors. So actually the topic, when we are thinking about I want my business and myself to have a lasting positive impact, refers to all of this, and maybe personally it also refers to having a better life, having maybe a more sustainable approach over life, in the way we consume, in the way we produce waste, in the way we buy things. So everything being a little bit optimized in order to apply to the reality that we have today. Sustainable Development Goals, it's something that was developed by United Nations organization and delivered in 2015. At that time, these goals, these 17 goals, were addressing the world's greatest problems. Now, I think that since 2015 till today, there are some additional problems that weren't foreseen at that time. So let's say the Sustainable Development Goals are the roadmap or the silver lining of addressing the most important topics that the world has at this time. For example, like eradicating poverty or hunger, providing good health and well-being to everybody, or having quality education. These are, let's say, challenges that the world has today. They will not be solved tomorrow, but these 17 goals addresses these huge topics and give a little bit of essence where the companies and where the individuals should look in order to advance them. So they are talking about a sustainable strategy for business. They are talking about working conditions in a fair way. They are also talking about eliminating gender gaps when it comes to employment, for example, and so on. So fair production, fair consumption, and so on. So what are the Sustainable Development Goals? Very shortly, probably you all of them have seen somewhere, because I know they are posted mostly everywhere. Even I've seen in shops, maybe printed on some walls. They are always considered 17 colorful boxes. Nobody looks at them, but they know them because they are so colorful. I guess this was a very good eye-catcher for United Nations when they decided to have these boxes in such vivid colors. But what they are 17 goals with 169 targets in total. So every goal has its own targets, sub-goals, and indicators, which are addressing the problems the world have today. So going just shortly through them, you can see, as I mentioned already, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy. These are topics that we all have to work today. Decent work and economic growth, for example, SDG number 8 is a very important SDG that it's this year it's a topic of European Parliament, because this is today a very big problem. Ensuring decent work conditions and ensuring fair payment for fair work, it's something that it's becoming a huge problem. Industry, innovation and infrastructure, it's also another very important SDG, SDG number 9, that governs the entire innovation area. And then we go through sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11. SDG 12 talks about responsible consumption and production, where we also as individuals have something to say about. SDG 13 is referring to climate action and everything we do for saving the climate around us and preserving it for the next generations, for our children, for their children, and so on. SDG 14 and 15 are tackling two similar things, life below water and life on land. And the last two SDGs are also very interesting. SDG 16 is talking about peace, justice, and strong institutions. Living in democratic countries, in democratic states, having strong institutions and having strong citizens engagement. It's also very important for everybody who is interested to ensure a better prosperity. And then the 17th goal is called Partnerships for the Goals. It is the one that encompasses everything that has to do with partnerships between different companies, between organizations, public-private investment or cooperation. So actually it becomes, maybe the last SDG becomes the one that encompasses all the efforts of the first ones. So this is very shortly about the SDGs, because more information, if you are interested to read about each of us in English, each of these SDGs, I have a special link I can provide to you. And then there you can find the description and the indicators of each SDG.
For sure, we will send, sorry Corina to interrupt you, we will send the email after with the presentation. Yes. And for any question, I think the best thing is to contact you directly if they want to.
Yes,
know.
I'm happy to answer if I know the answer, or if I do not know it, I will research for it. I'm very happy to answer all the questions that you will decide to send to me. But for now, this is like a very short introduction. What are the SDGs and how do they look like? I think that from my experience so far, there are 4 major reasons why I believe businesses and also startups, so smaller and bigger companies, miss on their powerful contribution to the SDGs. From having a valuable idea and a very interesting idea, and then putting all the internal systems around it and creating products and services, having an outcome and impact, I think still that companies are missing on the implementation of sustainable development goals because they are not looking at these goals from all angles, and therefore they are missing potential opportunities for investment, for partnership, and for collaboration. There is often missing out communication on the achievements that every company is doing on the SDGs, because they are rather limited. And I would say, if you decide that your company is going to tackle some of the challenges SDGs present, please communicate it widely. Make a bigger communication, even if you are a smaller company. These are very important topics that governments, consumers, authorities are interested to learn about. And of course, your competitors, your market where you're active. There is also, when we talk about sustainable development, a lot of competencies that must be developed, because let's be honest, we don't really know what sustainable development means. It means different things for different businesses. So competencies are very important to be identified and then developed in order to design a sustainable growth culture in the companies. And this is often overlooked because most of the companies are still living in a process where profit is very important and everything else falls on the second or third place. And another thing which misses on the SDG implementation is the fact that only 30% of impact businesses can measure and demonstrate their sustainability in the value chain. And this is even today a small problem, because it is difficult to demonstrate and to show how your company is advancing the sustainable development goals, because we don't have yet a way how to show it. So every company, every business is free to come out to carve their own indicators in line with the SDGs in order to show and to demonstrate how they work towards the achievement of these targets. But there is no recipe yet. So of course it is difficult to come up from the very beginning with what would be interesting. Why the SDGs are not yet implemented? At the global level, many CEOs have declared recently on LinkedIn, I took the information, that they do not really understand, as business owners, as business drivers, what the SDGs really offer. It is still a problem. They need to really look to the SDGs, and they really need to understand what it's the offering they are making, not only today, but on the long term. Because in order to achieve a sustainable development, this will not happen overnight. So you have to start today, let's say, and to get to it in a certain amount of time. Also, some companies do not feel responsible to contribute to the implementation of SDGs because it was something that was given by the United Nations organization, and they do not really feel connected to it. Although sustainable development is not something new, because it existed in the past and it for surely will exist in the future, there are many players on the market who are saying, yeah, what do I have to do with this? This is something that came on top of me, I don't have to implement it. There is not enough budget available. And yes, to drive a sustainable business, you can't do it overnight. You have to invest in your processes, you have to invest in your manufacturing, you have to invest in your people. So all this requires some money. And at the current time, a lot of companies are claiming they do not have the money to do this, to start this implementation. Of course, not enough human resources available. I talked briefly beforehand about competencies. From where do you get the people who understand and work and come with strategies if they do not have the competencies to understand what sustainable growth means? And of course, a no satisfactory level of estimated benefits. There is a problem with the SDGs. They are still really considered as just as an investment, but what benefits comes in the future is not very clear. And it's true, because there's something that will provide us with results in the next period of time, not necessarily today. Today, probably it's just an investment, but in the future, it will come back 1,000 times with a much higher benefits than we can estimate today. So How can a business advance SDGs implementations? We first have to understand what they really are and go away from maybe praising it to a level that we believe it's a Bible. There's no universal recipe of Bible. So SDGs are clearly some targets, they're a roadmap or a silver lining, if you want, that helps your company understand what is sustainable development. But it's no universal recipe, not a Bible you should live your life after. It's a vision of future, how the world should be in 2030 or maybe 2050. It talks about the complexity of sustainable development. And yes, sustainable development cannot be done in one direction and forgetting the other directions that are congruent. These are goals. If somebody will read through that link that I'm going to provide later on, these are goals that come from common sense. So it makes a lot of sense to implement them. This is my personal opinion. They are an umbrella of indicators to the roadmap of development for Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030 is a document that it's called the document where these SDGs were presented, the first thing. And I consider them personally a starting point to get inspiration and develop your own indicators as a business in line with the SDGs, and a business map to achieve sustainability and sustainable development, exactly where it matters for your company and where it matters. So how it matters and where it matters for a company is very important, because thinking of sustainable development, if you think as individual or you think as a company, you have certain needs, you have certain goals. You want to produce something, you want to offer something, it's your business. So you have to tune those needs and goals to the SDGs and not the other way around. What are the main steps to transform and to adapt the SDGs to your business needs? I'm always preaching this because I hear a lot of companies, and even if in Romania, a lot of communication on how should we implement the SDGs. The correct formulation should be not how do we implement SDGs, but how do we adapt and adopt the SDGs to what our business environment needs, to what our businesses need. So first, as the first one, I call it a discovery phase. Just look at the SDGs and their targets and just take some time. There are 17 SDGs, but don't be afraid to review them. Look at their general targets and think, what do they mean specifically for your business and for yourself, and review these targets accordingly to what comes from your business. So this discovery phase should be the aha moment where you think, okay, I want to achieve these goals personally or as a business, and here I see where I can put these goals on top of the SDGs, and this will be my contribution actually to the SDGs. The second step is called shape and then share, and I call it like this because the second step is very important. It means to prioritize what you have seen in SDGs, those targets, those indicators, to prioritize them according to your business needs. So first of all, to do this, you can't do it by yourself. You need to discuss it with your stakeholders. So talk to your stakeholders to determine which SDGs for your business are, which SDGs your business can contribute the most to. So invite your investors, invite your stakeholders, your customers, your suppliers, the authorities, invite representative of government, and find out where your business can contribute most to the SDGs. Review what are the risks that your operations, your business is bringing to people and environment, if there are any. And then decide what beneficial products or services your company can provide in order to solve existing problems. So it's very important to keep this in mind. Look at those SDGs where your company can contribute the most. look if there are any risks that your company is bringing to environment and people that you can tackle through the SDGs, and look towards those projects, products, services, investment that your company can bring on the market in order to tackle existing challenges, and use the SDGs as a roadmap to carve your action plan. In order to share, so I call this the sharing step. It has to do a lot with communication. And I mentioned before, I think that the companies who are working with the SDGs embedded in their business model, or they use it to adapt their operation to it, are too less communicating on their achievement, and that's a pity. So again, if you want to communicate on the SDGs, you need to make some communication report, something to offer to outside. So again, talk to your stakeholders about what matters and where it matters in your company. So what should we report about, and where it is interesting to measure our contribution. Then decide together with your stakeholders, again, customers, suppliers, maybe other collaborators you're working with. Decide together, discuss what would be the best content of your report, and then identify which are the general information needs and specific details that your report must produce. Because I've seen a lot of SDG reports, and there's just a beautiful storytelling about what the company is doing. But if I'm an investor, I'm interested in finding specific information, maybe not so much, but I want to see a specific line which raises my attention as an investor. If I am a customer, I want to read something that attracts me as a customer towards that business. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe in the future I will follow this business, or I will follow this shop, or I will follow this manufacturer, because I know that the services and products that they are producing are in line with what I know it means responsible production, or what I know it means responsible development. So don't forget about these things. These are very important and can attract a lot of attention and a lot of communication, positive impact for your company. So maybe I mentioned before this very shortly, but I would like to leave it with a slide with you. How to look at the SDGs, it's not very complicated. You have to look in two steps. The first, to assess what risks is your business producing on people and environment, and maybe focus on that and identify, if you focus on that, identify those most severe negative impacts on people and environment which are linked to your company's operation and the value chain. So tackle that, find opportunities or identify opportunities to tackle these risks, and also come up with ways how to maximize the positive outcomes from what you're doing towards people and environment. So that can be something that where you say, okay, I will use the SDGs, some of the SDGs, for tackling these risks that my business is producing on people and environment. The second step is to say, okay, I have identified the risks, but I want to bring more. But my business is not only identifying risks, but I want to bring more towards development, towards this sustainable development. So the step two is to think as a business, what positive products and services can my business produce in order to solve existing challenges? And the focus here is to think how the company skills and capabilities that your company has can be used in order to develop products, services, and investment that can contribute to the SDG achievement. So what are those products, services, and investments you can bring for a better development in the future? And objective is to be sure that if you're producing these products, services, investments, opportunities, then make sure that these are developed and delivered in a way that maximizes the viability of the company and minimizes any negative impacts that you might have. So these are two very important steps, and you can focus on the both. You can focus on just tackling the risks that your company is bringing, or you can focus on just on positive products and services. But it's important to have the right focus and not to mix it. If I may bring now the example of Corina Mihul that you mentioned about your business. Yes, you said about producing, I guess, if I'm correct, print and online materials, and also you have your online store for Murano jewelry and glass. Well, okay, then Corina can look at these steps and say, the first step is to identify, do I have any negative risk my business brings on the market? And here you can think about, okay, I'm doing a printing business and an online business. For the printing business, do I produce anything that can be considered harmful for environment or for people? Do I produce maybe waste? Do I consume maybe paper in a way that it's perhaps unbalanced? I'm making sure that I'm taking this paper from producers who are maybe not those who are cutting necessarily the biggest woods in Romania, but I'm also using some paper that comes from recycling. Sometimes for certain magazine, for certain flyers, I'm printing with a certain ink, I'm using a certain design. Is this design something that can harm people or environment? Or Corina can think about what positive products and services I can bring on the market. For example, you are bringing your juice and Murano glass from Murano, let's say, directly. So you think, okay, one positive impact that I'm producing is I'm enabling that consumers from Romania are meeting the producers from Murano. I'm helping those producers also expand that network. I'm helping them maybe make a better business. I don't know, I'm expanding their revenues, but I also put the consumers here that are having the same values like you, Corina, having a beautiful necklace, wearing a beautiful bracelet, giving value to those Murano products that are meeting the smaller producers there who probably would never know about the consumers here. So you are creating this connection, and then you have a positive impact. You're helping smaller producers grow the business, you're helping clients with a certain flair for beautiful things out of glass, and especially Murano, who is very special, to connect their values, their needs, and their wishes to have beautiful things directly with those producers on the market. So here is a little bit this view that you already probably have on your business, but I'm hoping that my presentation can help you also identify perhaps new ways and new methods, or maybe new partnerships that you can enhance this. So this I wanted to express through this two-ways approach to prioritization of the SDGs. To bring another example, I thought to take a clothing manufacturing or a clothing manufacturer somewhere in the world. I don't give any details about who it is and from where it produces clothing. And I just wanted to show you this value chain. Yeah? The way how we look at it, it's that we know a clothing manufacturer takes raw materials from nature. It has developed operations. The clothing produced must get to a certain distribution channel, to specific shops, and then customers come and buy this clothing and they use it further on. So if we look to this...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
So
bring it on.
Alina Liciu asked, companies are sometimes confused about which budget should they use for CDG, implementation, management, consulting, marketing, and philanthropy.
So which budget should they use?
Yes.
Which budgets should they use? I think that for SDGs, the operations budget, it's okay. Let's say for the implementation of the SDGs, for example, you have to adapt a certain process, a business process, or you have to adapt a certain installation or a production facility. Then necessarily you will use this operations budget. If you want to communicate, if you want to create awareness on how your company delivers on the achievement of SDGs, you have a communication budget. So I think that the SDGs can also be seen in parts. Yes, it depends what you have to achieve. If I'm let's say a clothes manufacturer and I want to implement SDGs by investing into machinery, then I will have an operational budget. But if I want to communicate and I want to make maybe a booklet about my company, which describes very nicely what I'm doing in order to advance the SDGs, then probably I will have a communication budget that I can use. But from my experience, it should be not necessarily the task of somebody that works for communication, somebody that works for CSR, somebody, so corporate social responsibility, somebody that works maybe for security. It's something that it stays in the core of the business. So that should be a special budget given maybe by the CEO or by the CFO or by the chief financial officer or by the director of finances, as we know it maybe in other companies. So it should be a special budget dedicated to the SDGs, because this is very important. If you want to stand up with your company a little bit different from your competitors and show what you're doing for the SDGs. I hope that this answers Alina's question. Do you have more questions? Should I continue or should I wait for, should I answer more questions?
I think we can continue.
We can continue. Okay. So, good. So, in this example, I want to show you that it's not very difficult to use SDGs where it matters for the company. Again, I'm thinking about creating impact where it matters for the company. So, for example, if I'm a t-shirt producer, yeah, and I use for my t-shirt a lot of cotton. So the raw materials are the starting point in my production, production process. So I'm interested in the fact that several crops, maybe cotton, maybe others, fibers which I'm using to produce t-shirts, have a negative impact on land, and they can produce a lot of soil degradation. So because I'm a responsible company, I'm thinking, okay, I'm taking a lot of fiber from the nature, but the soil gets degraded after I'm doing this. So I'm interested to find ways, to find measures to tackle this. And I will put these measures under SDG 15, which says about life on land. And my priority in this case would be to reduce the negative impact through reducing soil degradation. This is something that I, as a company, have identified. I have made some analysis. I have made some risk evaluation, and I see this is something I can deal with. Of course, that would be other impacts in the nature through my crops, but this is something I can work on it. So this would be one priority in the raw material space. Let's maybe think about the logistics. I'm a clothing producer. I produce it, and then my production goes with trucks, with cars, with trains. It goes somewhere for distribution. Yes. So I'm interested to ensure, to be sure that the people who are driving my trucks have good conditions for driving, for sleeping somewhere, for not being overtired, for having maybe some schedules of driving that are respecting their natural working ways. So another priority that I would see at my company could be SDG 3, ensuring good health and well-being. And I will call it, let's say, I want to reduce the negative impact by ensuring safe working environment conditions for my logistic and operation, because I know that my business is depending on logistics. Another thing that I can maybe think also as a company, okay, it's depending on my specific, let's say I have huge operations, I produce a lot of clothing, and I produce these shirts or t-shirts or whatever I'm doing, not necessarily in my country. I have subsidiaries maybe in Romania, maybe in Bulgaria, maybe in Serbia. So I have there people who produce my t-shirts. It's important for me to know that SDG 8, this decent work and economic growth, is very important for any company, because if I'm working with people from other countries who are underpaid, who are working in bad conditions, I can't really expect that the quality of my products should be higher. And I also can't expect that this is a sustainable business in the future, because if I do not pay correctly these workers, they will leave, or maybe they will just strike against me. So there are unions that can protect their rights and so on. So I'm thinking and I'm acting proactively, and I'm making this for my operation a target. And I say this priority could be ensuring that every worker that works for me receives a little bit more than the minimum wage of all employees, or I'm making sure that all the workers are receiving the minimum wage, that nobody is underpaid. And if I can raise this wage, then it's my company decision. But I'm making sure that I'm following also on the law, but I'm following also on the something that makes sense, that it's derived from common sense, decent work and payment conditions. And with that, I'm maybe going to the back of this value chain: product use and product and life. We all use clothing, we all wash them, we all iron them. So as a customer, let's say I'm interested maybe to buying those products who do not necessarily need a lot of special detergent, a special softener to wash this clothing, because this costs me a lot as a customer, yes? Besides the cost of the product, which I already purchased, I have to give special attention how I maintain it. So it would be good that a clothing company, it's also presenting with, let's say, clothes or products that are easily maintainable, that do not produce for a customer a hurdle on top of that. So my priority as a producer would be to reduce the negative impact on, let's say, SDG 6, which talks about clean water and sanitation. And I would like to reduce the wastewater coming from customers washing my products, the wastewater coming from me as a producer producing my products. So again, I have a lot of things to connect with this SDG. And of course, the product and life is very important. We all know around the world there are huge masses of waste coming from textile, and nobody knows today what to do with them. So as a responsible producer of textiles, of clothing, I would say that another priority would be to offer opportunities for my consumers to recycle. So either they send the clothing back to me, I have a recycling unit, I can get this for my customers, I can repurpose, I can repair them, I can offer a lot of services that in the end will reduce the amount of waste from my products and from my services, and it will also complete this circle which we call circular economy. Yes, so I'm closing the loop of my products, and I know that if the customer decides not to wear anymore my clothing, he has several options. He can send it back to me, I can put it back into my production process, and for me it's a saving of money, it's a saving of water, it's a saving of energy, because I can also produce the new clothing using this second-hand product. So just offering more offers to the customer is very important to close the loop, and then it's very important to ensure this SDG 12, which talks about responsible consumption and production. Do you have any questions on that, or do you want to ask more on that? No?
If you have any questions, you can write it on the chat, and I'm going to tell Corina.
Okay.
Corina, let me tell you, it's very, very interesting. I mean, I found out things
Really?
I never knew they exist.
Okay.
So it's very, very important, all the information that you are sharing with us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I hope that it will really serve to the purpose. So what I want to say about prioritizing with SDG targets, the thing is that you have to look on these targets and decide not necessarily which one is more important than others, because you have seen they are all interconnected. We talk about end of poverty, we talk about fair payment, we talk about ending gender gap. So they are all interconnected. Yeah, for example, if I am a company to bring special medical services today in a community, today we need it most than maybe ever. I can't really expect that the community will use my services if the community is very poor, because they will not have money, if they do not work somewhere, if they do not have an education to understand why they need to use maybe certain ways to protect themselves and to protect their families. So all these are connected, yes, in a way or another, they are interconnected. So looking at the SDGs for your business doesn't mean that you say this SDG is more important than other, but you're just mentioning that your contribution would be higher to some of them, to some of these goals, and that will be your priority goals, and to the other SDGs which are interconnected, your contribution will exist, but not such in a bigger way like your priority goals. So this is very important also when you communicate what your company is doing for achieving SDGs. It's always good to mention that your company is considering all the SDGs, but to some of them the contribution is higher. It's much more, has much more impact than to the other ones. That's all. Some examples maybe that are linked to the SDG targets. We don't have to go through this if you do not wish for. There would be the presentation delivered to you. So, but I just wanted to give some examples because they bring a lot of clarity. So for example, if you decide, we talked about the wages, yeah? So for example, if you say, I'm a company and I want to bring better wages for workers in my supply chain, you can directly relate these targets to several SDGs. To SDG 1, which I mentioned, is talking about ending poverty. And especially as it has this target for reducing poverty by 50% until 2030. You can also relate it to SDG 10, which talks about reducing inequalities. And especially the target 10.1, which says to sustain income growth for 40% at a higher rate than the national average. So if you are the company, as a company, you decide to give maybe up to 40% more wages than the national average salary, then you are considered that you contribute to a better environment, to people having a better income. That means they live better. Let's put it this way. And so these are some examples. You can also look a little bit later. If we are talking about climate change a lot, and every company wants to bring their contribution to climate change and to ensure that the climate doesn't deteriorate so badly until 2015. So you would say, okay, my priority is SDG 13, which is called climate action, and I want to be a player on this. But you can also relate to several targets. You can also relate on SDG number 2, which talks about eradicating hunger. Why? Because you will do something about climate action. You will do a sustainable agriculture. For example, this means that you provide crops, you provide jobs, you provide the possibility that people have some reserves. So you are working towards hunger eradication in those countries where this is a problem. Then SDG 3, good health and well-being. Of course, having a better environment around us, look at the warmth, look at the climate, it means that we are feeling better, yes? We have better lives. We maybe have those things in our environment that help us not to get ill and not to get uncomfortable. So this is definitely a contribution to SDG number 3. And also to SDG number 7, which talks about affordable and clean energy for everybody in the world. And we know that there are huge places in the world where clean, affordable energy is still a problem. We are still depending on fossil fuels in many, many places in the world. And therefore, bringing renewable energy would be that we go away from that fossil fuels that are polluting a lot. We bring new affordable sunlight, wind energy, water energy. So these are considered clean energy solutions, and this brings a better life to us. So you can see that when you talk about one particular contribution, you can also find ramification of that contribution to other SDGs. So you can never really think I'm working just for one. No, you will find out if you look close enough, you're working for more than just one. Again, some other examples that you are free also to look afterwards, and you can ask me any question on these examples. I found it very interesting to present them to you in the case that you want to do a sustainability report, and this will help you. For example, some personal example I take from Africa was that I was working for a company in Western Africa, and they had a project to bring renewable energy, so solar panel, in some villages there where they did not have any electricity. So they wanted to provide electricity without having the national grid. And the population there first embraced this project, but then refused it and then worked against it. And the question was, why? We are bringing you electricity. What's wrong about that? You have a fridge, you have a TV you can use, you have lights during night. And then they said, yes, but I'm not interested to turn on the lights because I will have a lot of mosquitoes. And malaria is a big concern in our villages, in our region. So therefore, I would not like to have more light, more artificial light. So you can see that this is something that it's, even if you're thinking as a company to bring positive impact and to bring positive solutions to the problems, you always have to consider where these problems fit into what the people need. So yeah, demand versus request. So it was a very important and very interesting project for me. If you want to do a SDG report, and I advise you to do this, as I said before, for the communication purpose and for getting your competitive advantage just for communicating what you're doing to SDGs, because SDGs is something still very new. I've put here a checklist, very easy checklist for every company that can use, talking about what is your significant impact, what's your strategy, where you can bring examples. So bring a lot of examples showing how your company has contributed to them. If you can develop indicators, your own indicators, saying that, okay, maybe in the last year I used, for example, Corina's printing business, I've used so much, let's say, recycling paper, or I used so much, I don't know, ink, that it's coming from I don't know, other ways that the normal, or I dealt with how people react and how people are managing their waste after, because printing produces waste. Yeah, after I don't really need a newspaper or something, then what can I do with it? I throw it away, I can send it somewhere, I can reuse it, and so on. So try to talk about your own indicators. You don't have to have a recipe for that, but bring your indicators that you think your customers, your investors would like to see and would demonstrate your contribution. And what are future plans for achieving further progress? It's very important that you say as a company, I know there are problems. I know that maybe I'm not sustainable now because I have to do several adaptations of my business model. And I will do it. And I could not do it before, I didn't know about it, but now I have a plan. It's important to communicate this plan, because everybody then will be looking at you like an SDG champion, and will see, okay, we know there are problems, but we also know these problems are managed by these companies. And we know that in a certain amount of time, these problems will be solved. It's very important to communicate this. Who could be interested in an SDG report? I a little bit mentioned before, your consumers. Don't forget that customers today are very, 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 very interested in transparency of a company and social responsibility of a company. So customers more and more are looking and searching and Googling, what is this company doing for, besides their own operation, what is doing for people, for environment, where is the volunteering projects, so what's doing in tackling what other challenges except their own coming from the operation. Governments, including our government, is very interested about what companies are actually having a strategy towards achieving SDGs, because at the national level, it is not known yet who's doing what. They are trying to do a national strategy on sustainable development, but this is still not finished. So they are also interesting to take out information from the business environment and see how they can produce. Where are the biggest players? Where are those investment opportunities and so on? So very important. Another category is your investors. Please think of your investors as your biggest friends. They are very important to know that your business is not just a business. If you are in an energy business, you're not just producing energy, but you're doing something more. Maybe you're doing something to address education. You're doing something to address infrastructure. And there are so many things connected that you have to really talk to your investors and address them to be interested not only in the investment itself, so where is my rate of return, but also to say we are measuring impact, and impact, it has the same importance as your return of investment. So impact businesses would be highly, highly regarded for their contribution. And of course, the civil society, we are all citizens, we can be more engaged, we should be more informed, we should be more knowledgeable about processing this information and being able to speak what's interesting for us. And we can hold companies accountable for their doing, as well as press for more transparency. So today is not really difficult to come up with asking a company through an email, through various sources, what are you doing to tackle these risks, these negative impacts that you're bringing on environment. We can't really stay idle and looking back and saying, oh, somebody else will take care of it. We as engaged citizens, we have the right to do this, and we have all the power to do this. So we should maybe be more engaged. Maybe it's not necessarily to take now this slide, because I mentioned before there are several benefits that you can have from implementing the SDGs. So I can leave it to you, maybe to read later on when you have more time. But what I want to stress is that these SDGs implementation are estimated at worth $12 trillion of investment. So whoever wants to embark on this and wants to tap into this pool of $12 trillion is welcome to do so. I wanted just briefly to touch about this COVID-19 crisis we are having today. And from my personal point of view, I found 4 things that stood into my eyes after this month. The first thing was that maybe what could have been better if some of the SDGs, some of this, let's call it sustainable development, would have been implemented. Would things be different? And I found 4 things that I think could be different. So the first was locally developed for local needs. We all depend on masks, on hand gloves, on medical equipment. Most of it came from China, or most of it came from somewhere else. And so in this crisis, we found ourselves the need to develop local businesses that would provide for the crisis. So that was the first thing that stood up. Locally developed, it's something that it's important, and we should not be bound to international export. We should not be bound to other countries bringing something into our land, which we can also produce ourselves. So we suffered because of that. I know that there were a lot of hospitals who are struggling for not having the medical solution for treating their patients, and they were struggling because everything was produced somewhere else and there was no local supplier. So that was one thing. Then health and first aid was again a solution, a problem. We didn't have a solution yet, but we all know this. for me, important is the way how we make the diagnosis of COVID, and how you have to call the doctors, you have to go somewhere, somebody has to look on you. But what if you would have an opportunity maybe to do this diagnosis from the distance, yeah? And maybe using an app for health check, or using maybe just a phone call where your doctor asks you several things, and then based on your temperature, based on the historic of your symptoms, it could be already a sort of diagnostic provided to you. I guess this would help. Then, of course, supply chain, yeah, distribution and delivery of various products.